Good afternoon. Welcome to New Mexico Highlands University Women's Center, WomenX Center celebration of International Women's Day, and happy International Women's Day to all of you. I am Katie Christensen. I'm volunteering with the WomenX Center and my worthy and brilliant colleagues to bring you today's event. Destiny, I'm going to jump into our welcome. So if you could keep an eye on the waiting room and admit students and other folks, that would be terrific. A couple of quick house cleaning items. The chat window is open, so feel free to react and interact in the chat window. Feel free also, if you are here for our keynote speaker, Letitia Bahuyo, if you're here to visit with her later and you have a question for her, please feel free to put that in the chat. I expect the chat will kind of blow up. So if we don't get to your question, it's because we will have run out of time or run out of capacity. So I would like to start today with a welcome. I also would like to acknowledge that all of us, or most of us, have probably been sitting in front of this computer, in this chair, or in this space for a lot of today. If that is true, give me a reaction in the chat bar, or give me a heck yeah, or a thumbs up, because I think it's true. So I would like to take a moment to ground us, because we have all been sitting here. So if you're comfortable turning your camera on, that would be really great, because this is going to be a slightly interactive piece. Hello, Caroline. Hello, Alan. Professor Rossetti, welcome. Hello, Alan. I like your haircut, by the way. Poor Alan, I call him out. So many of us have been sitting here and we sit all day, every day. So you don't have to adjust your camera, but I'm going to ask you to step into a space of vulnerability here. And it might be a little bit weird, but it also might be fun. Spoiler alert, it's going to be fun. So wherever you are, just stand up. There are these little tiny boxes in our Zoom screen, and they're filled with people, and we usually see about this much of them, or sometimes this much of them. So wherever you are, give us a different view in your box. And now I want you to fill your box. Stretch and fill your box. Touch all four corners of your little tiny window. Feel free to get goofy and put a foot or a knee up there, and twist your body. Stretch up high. Yeah, doesn't it feel good? Hello, Misi. And when you're ready, stretch as tall as you can and have a seat again. If you're more comfortable standing up, moving around, then by all means do that. If you want your camera on, you can have it on. If you don't want it on, you don't have to have it on. But what I'd like you to do right now is find a position that's comfortable. If you're in a chair, settle up nice and tall. Make sure that your shoulders are square. Make sure your spine is aligned so that your head is over your shoulders through your spine, and your hips are aligned with your shoulders and your booty is nice and rested. And I'm going to ask you to take a little bit of time to slow down here. We have a lot to offer today. We'll keep your minds busy and your hearts full, and hopefully you'll be a little entertained. But for right now, I invite you to breathe into this shared space across digital and literal miles. Close your eyes if that's comfortable. I'd like you to take a big breath in through your nose, slowly, and out through your mouth. Let your breathing just return to normal, and bring into your mind a woman who has helped shape your life. For many of us, that could be an elder, a mom, or an abuelita, a teacher. For others, it could be a sister by blood or a sister of the heart. Bring one of those powerful women into your mind now and focus on her. Focus on her with an attitude of gratitude, and breathe in together slowly through your nose and out. And one more time, in and out. And when you're ready, just blink your eyes open. And before we begin, I'd like to bring your attention to the efforts of the Honor Native Land Guide, which you can easily access online but I will also put a link to it in the chat box. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes and dreams and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort today to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. In the state of New Mexico, we are standing on the stolen ancestral lands of the people of 23 different tribes, pueblos, and nations. We pay respect to the elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. Today, especially, I want to honor the females of these tribes, pueblos, and nations, and honor the strength and beauty and vitality that they bring to this effort today. Thank you. With that, I'd like to present Destiny Nuno, Director of the Women's Center, WomenX Center, to also share with us some inspirational and amazing women.
Thank you, Katie. Well, first and foremost, hello, hi everyone, and welcome. This is our first International Women's Day celebration via Zoom. Like Katie said, I'm Destiny Nuno. I'm the director for the WomenX Center at Highlands University. Though we wish we were in person today, we're still very happy and excited that we're able to have this celebration. We have a jam-packed program today. We have some music, some poetry, some original work, amazing guest speakers. We are honored to have you guys here with us today. I'm a little nervous, but so excited just for you guys to see what we have going on. Our guest speaker today is Leticia Bahuyo. She's an artist specializing in drawing and sculpture, installation art, and she will speak to us about her art the second hour of the program. So she'll be joining us at 4 o'clock. If you guys have any questions for Leticia when she does join us, you guys are more than welcome to go ahead and put those in the chat box. Because she's going to be speaking majority of the time, she might run out of time and not get to your questions. But you can still go ahead and put those there in the box. Like I said, well, I didn't say this, but we are grateful for the Fine Arts Department at Highlands as well for sponsoring today's event. If you'd like to know more about the programs at Highlands, visit our website at nmu2.edu. Okay. The International Women's Day website tells us that International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity. Significant activity is witnessed worldwide as groups come together to celebrate women's achievements or rally for women's equality. Started in 1911, International Women's Day is celebrated every March 8th as a celebration of women's cultural, political, social, and economic achievements, and as a call to action for gender equality. Today, we will be focusing on the celebratory aspect of the event. The 2021 theme is Women in Leadership, and the campaign theme is Choose to Challenge. What I love about the themes is how flexible they are. You can choose to challenge a world stacked against gender equality. You can choose to challenge your sisters to do more, to get involved. And you can choose to challenge women you know to love themselves more. Here I have listed several facts about being a woman in 2021 that you might find surprising, that you might not. So here we go. Women in the United States earn 82 cents for every dollar that a man earns. If you're a woman of color, it gets worse. Black women only earn 63 cents for every dollar. Native women earn 60 cents. And Latinas at the bottom with earning only 55 cents for every dollar earned by white men. Women all over the nation are still married off as child brides. According to the United Nations, 37,000 girls under the age of 18 are married every single day. Human trafficking continues to be a major problem globally. An estimated 24.9 million people are victims of modern day slavery, and over 70% of those are women and girls. In the United States, so there are over 50% of the population, we do not share representation in elected office. Even though 2020 was a record-breaking year and we have Kamala Harris representing us in the vice presidency, women still only make up 20% of elected officials in the Senate. Now, we do have a long way to go, but there's still some pretty exciting things that happened. There's several things to celebrate as well. In 2020, we saw a record number of openly gay and other members of the LGBTQIA+ community elected to public office. We do have the first women of color in the second highest elected office in our nation. 50 women of color are serving in the current Congress. Here in New Mexico, we are proud to be home to Deb Haaland, the first Native American to hold a cabinet position. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the youngest woman of color in Congress with over 8.9 million followers on Instagram, inspires a new generation of activists. As we hear from our sisters today, I challenge you to consider ways you can take action, big or small. You can do anything from donating to a female candidate to running for office yourself. You can engage positively on social media to combat misinformation and disinformation. You can support your sisters in small or large ways, and you can celebrate the wins. I'd like to shout out some of the people who helped us get here today and for the event that was put on. First, we have the wonderful Dr. Erica Durkis. She's the co-founder of the Highlands Women X Center, who champions this event every year. She is a researcher, artist, author, and mentor who has worked in reproductive justice and other areas of feminist activism for decades. We thank her for bringing us here today. We also have Dr. Blanca Cespedes, assistant professor and chair of the forestry department at Highlands as well, and also the co-founder of the NMHU Women X Center, who brings a special perspective today as a woman of color in STEM. She is a tireless champion of women in the sciences, and her joy is always a bright light. Next, we have Drs. David and Shireen Lobdow from the Fine Arts Department. They help bring us here today with generous sponsorship from their department. Dr. Shireen Lobdow will be facilitating the conversation with Leticia Bejuyo, our distinguished keynote speaker. We will have the chat bar open throughout the presentation, so feel free to shout out your sisters and friends, cheer on the celebration, and later you can go ahead and drop your questions in the box for Leticia. And just want to say thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you're as excited as we've all been putting this together for you guys.
My name is Norma Angelica Valenzuela Pulido. I am assistant professor of Spanish at New Mexico Highlands University, and I am going to read an excerpt from my Mestiza Consciousness a la Mexicana, en última, and Águeda Martínez, Bridging and Legitimizing Querencia in the Borderlands. Querencia is the understanding of place, the love of place, as defined by Juan Esteban Arellano. Una lucha de fronteras, a struggle of borders, because I, a mestiza, continually walk out of one culture and into another, because I am in all cultures at the same time. Alma entre dos mundos, 3, 4, me zumba la cabeza con lo contradictorio. Estoy norteada por todas las voces que me hablan simultáneamente. Gloria Anzaldúa. Roots on becoming a transnational Mexicana in the borderlands. To begin building upon my lived experiences and my anchoring in Querencia, I situate myself in relation to this work by considering Anzaldúa's articulation of la facultad. which is what has sustained me as the first generation immigrant to the US, one who serves as a translator and cultural broker between the dominant culture and my ethnic community. Therefore, in my articulation of Querencia, I remapped my memories of Torreon and replicated them in Albuquerque. Like the countless number of immigrants to New Mexico who, as Arellano describes, were nostalgic for their homeland and wanted to replicate their habits, I also wanted to recreate my cultural practices in my adopted place in order to anchor my sense of space. My name is Norma Angelica Valenzuela Pulido. I am the first member of the Valenzuela family to earn a college degree. Yet the most important education I received was from my elders. They were all educated outside the traditional classroom. My indigenous maternal grandmother, Doña Fidencia Hernandez de Pulido, did not know how to read or write. She signed with a cross, the way the Spanish colonizers taught the indigenous converts. My abuelita Fidencia's wisdom, intelligence, and storytelling were fundamental during my formative childhood. Through her storytelling, and specifically her dichos, my sisters and I learned about respect toward others, values, and morals. Some of the dichos that my abuelita taught us and role modeled for us as children that I completely understand at this stage in my life are: Cuando tú vas, yo ya vine. When you go, I already went. And como te ves, me vi, y como me ves, te verás. As you see yourself, I saw myself, and as you see me, you will see yourself. As a child, I remember my abuelita telling my aunts and uncles these dichos so that they could understand that with age comes wisdom and knowledge, as well as respect from younger people. Another dicho that she taught us was not to judge people, and that we should never escupir al cielo porque te cae en la cara. We should never spit up at the sky because it will fall on your face. We learned to value the land we lived on and the animals that resided on it. We learned about discipline, hard work, spirituality, and healing. Our abuelita taught us to help others, hacer el bien sin mirar a quién, so do good no matter who it is. Through this saying, Grandma taught us to share our food and not be stingy with each other and with people in need. She instilled in us pride in being women and working class Mexicans. This is the cultural capital I brought with me to Albuquerque on September 16th, 1979. As I grew older, the more entrenched Nuevo Mexico has become in my blood. It's been over 30 years since I arrived in Albuquerquito and discovered my querencia for the land of enchantment that molded me into what I am today, a bilingual, bicultural, transnational, Mexicana activist scholar.
I challenge you today to be the best that you can be, to be an inspirational, motivational, empowering force in this world. Be that person that others want to seek out, that others want to learn from, that others want to have in their circle of influence. Be that person who is able to go out and risk what's necessary in order to make change, in order to be change. It's not supposed to be easy, but it is supposed to be real. And so that's what I challenge you with today. Be real, be authentic. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Blanca Céspedes, Assistant Professor and Chair of the Forestry Department at Highlands. I'm here today to celebrate with all of you the International Women's Day, but also the Day for the Equality of All Genders. My challenge today is sharing with all of you through this video one of the most important lessons I learned in my professional and personal life. As psychologists, we know that ecosystems are more resilient and stronger when they contain more diversity. I learned that in my professional life, my fears, vulnerabilities, and differences make me a better person, and that means being a better professional and having a better team. In my opinion, a big part of the success that Highlands wants to transmit and provide to you is based on that differences, is based on being proud of your diversity, because that makes us stronger and that makes us better. So choose your challenge and do your best. One of my differences is that I'm from Spain and I'm a Spanish native speaker. So now I'm going to send you this message in español. Hola a todos, soy Blanca Céspedes, profesora ayudante y jefa del Departamento de Forestales en Highlands. Mi desafío hoy es hablar en español o inglés separado y no en Spanglish, pero también compartir con vosotros una de las cosas más importantes que he aprendido en mi vida profesional y personal. Así como en los ecosistemas, la diversidad de especies les hace más fuertes y más resilientes. En nuestros trabajos y en nuestros mundos profesionales, en academia, la diversidad también nos hace más fuertes, más sabios y más resilientes. Entonces creo que Highlands quiere compartir con vosotros y siempre apoyar a esa diversidad y sentirse orgulloso de nuestras diferencias. Entonces, por favor, todos, sentiros orgullosos de vuestras diferencias porque eso nos hace mejores. Elige tu desafío y da lo mejor de tú mismo. Espero que tengáis todos un buen día y feliz Día Internacional de la Mujer. Bye.
Hola amigos y amigas, yo me llamo Linda Solís y vivo en el estado de Washington y estoy aquí hoy para decirles que yo soy muy orgullosa y me encanta poder dar un ejemplo de ser una mujer en una posición como la que tengo yo aquí en nuestra comunidad, de poder asistir y ayudar a familias, a gente, a niños con unas necesidades que ellos necesiten. Y me encanta poder ayudar a esta gente de mi comunidad. Me encanta poder ser una mujer hispana, mujer de color y dar un ejemplo a otras niñas como yo cuando yo venía creciendo. Me encanta poder ser ese ejemplo de que algún día yo puedo ser como ella. Hi everybody, my name is Linda Solis and I live out here in Washington State, and I'm just here to let you know that I am a very proud woman of color who works within this community, and it is such a great pleasure. I love to be able to be an example to little girls of color who look up to me and say, I can be like her one day. I can have a position like that. So go for it. Do it. You can do it. Just push forward. Thank you. Have a great day.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Withnall. I'm a certified nurse midwife. I'm from Las Vegas, New Mexico, and I worked there for many years, had a practice called Illumina Women's Health, and also worked with Dr. Swan. I'm currently working in a remote area of Alaska. I work in a town called Kotzebue for a company called Manilik. We basically take care of Inupiaq people. They're Native Alaskans. It's a town of about 3,000 people, very remote. You can only fly in, or in the summer you could come by boat. It'd be kind of difficult, but it's possible. Kotzebue is at about 62 degrees latitude and is on a sand spit in the Chukchi Sea. So that's actually north of the Bering Sea. What I wanted to actually talk about today, though, is a recent trip that I took to a village. In our service area, we have 11 small villages that we take care of. Because of COVID, we have not been doing women's health village trips. And this is long overdue. Now people are getting vaccinated. Alaska actually has the highest COVID vaccination rates in the country. and the tribes have been doing an incredible job. So we were able to start the village trips again. I was really excited because I've been wanting to do this ever since I worked here for over a year, and I hadn't had the opportunity yet. So our trip was going to a place called Point Hope, which is a small village, about 800 people on the coast, farther north. It's about 68 degrees latitude. Point Hope is a traditional whaling village. To this day, that's how they feed themselves. That's their culture. They get whales in the, not in the totally traditional way, because nowadays they use snow machines, but they still use harpoons. It's really incredible. So another nurse practitioner and I, we took a little plane called a Caravan up to Point Hope. It was me, Winnie, and a lot of cases of Dr. Pepper. Unfortunately, a lot of the villages have been introduced to sugar snacks that are unhealthy, and so there's a big demand for that kind of thing. It was a very cloudy day, but as we descended, I could see the sea ice, and the ocean is frozen up here, and I could see whale bones, little monuments around town, and I could see the town itself. So we went to the clinic and we slept in the clinic. Housing is in severe shortage in Arctic Alaska. People live in multi-generational housing. They live crammed together. It's very difficult to get resources to build homes. A lot of homes are in shipping containers. They're made out of shipping containers. I actually live in a shipping container. So we slept in the clinic in our exam room that we worked in on a little rollaway bed. They have community health aides who are from the villages, and they live in the village. They stay there. They take care of trauma. They have basic training. They're not nurses, but they know a lot, and they can take care of a lot. So we saw a lot of women, a lot of overdue needs, pap smears. They'd had their IUD in too long, their Nexplanon in too long. They had to be removed. They needed something. We saw pregnant women, all kinds of situations. And it was really interesting because all of the patients talked about getting ready for whaling. They're getting their equipment ready, they're getting the boats ready, they're getting the snow machines ready, they're getting clothing ready. I heard stories about, people's brother was eaten by a polar bear. There was a polar bear in town when we got there. I think I've limited to my time, so I would just like to say Happy Women's Week, and thank you so much for inviting me to join in your celebration. Take care. Bye.
This International Women's Day, I'd like to challenge you to be the first person in a room to speak out about something. I challenge you to speak up, speak out, and if necessary, call things out when you see something wrong. It takes courage, a lot of courage, to be the first person to talk about something. But studies show that when just one person speaks up, others will follow. It takes courage. I'm challenging you this upcoming year to have the courage to speak out.
My name's Joanne Vigil Koppler. I am currently a Santa Fe City Councilor. I'm in my third year. I'm also a realtor, a qualifying broker of my own company, Joanne Koppler Real Estate, and I'm vice chair of the State Employees Credit Union. Being agile to me just means being ready and being able to address whatever comes to you and to think on your feet. The things that I face daily as a leader primarily come from being on the city council. Those things are being able to incorporate everyone's opinion into your mindset, and then from there, trying to come to a conclusion about what would be best for the city. The single most important reason I believe for my success is that I try not to be afraid. I take chances. I think it's important to put yourself out there, because if you don't do that, you're not going to have options. And if you don't have options, you're not going to have choices. What's unique about doing business here is that there are so many different kinds of people, and there's so much entrepreneurship, there's state government, there's tourism. There is just a great deal of businesses and events and all kinds of people, different people wanting different things. In my career in real estate, it wasn't easy in the beginning. I just didn't really have an idea of how you got the business done. But really what I learned is it's a people business, and it goes back to my point that uniqueness in Santa Fe is that we have so much diversity, so many people coming here wanting to do different things and be successful, and I would say keep your eyes and ears open, and again, don't be afraid to go for it. I believe every leader should have an interest in the people that he or she is leading. Certainly knowing about what your function is, what's your purpose, being able to delegate, give accountability, give authority, and then check back in. I believe the most significant barrier for a woman in a leadership role is being underestimated. And so it's important that women be given the opportunities that they deserve. I don't think women have to ask permission for power. I think women have to act with power. Nobody's going to give them that power. You give power to yourself. And you give power to yourself by being prepared.
Hello. I'm sharing this very special testimony on this day, Women's Day, in our celebration of unity. I am a survivor of human trafficking and have endured modern-day slavery. Right now, I am an overcomer. I am living my best life. Although I am still separated from my children, I am working on transformation and healing. I was trapped and all alone for years on end. My only way out was through my faith, my light, my positivity. It saved me, it changed me, and showed me how my healing will give others a start in their own. I believe any and all positive faith and light and love can do this for us all. Today, I am challenging all my brothers and sisters who may not share the same beliefs, yet know what a positive lifestyle can bring to one. To let go of what makes us different and choose to love what makes us the same. To find my highest positivity, I had to be taken to my lowest negativity. We cannot just stay with what we feel are other positive people. We must venture into the negative and bring our positive nature with us. I'd like to challenge us all to make this world a brighter place with love and unity for all. Thank you.
Elephants are my absolute favorite animal. There are a number of fascinating facts about elephants that are very attractive to me. They're a highly organized society. They mourn their dead. They remember long lost herd members. They communicate through sounds below the range of human hearing, often feeling sounds through the soles of their feet and hearing each other over a mile away. Elephants are a matriarchal society. Herds usually consist of a primary matriarch, usually the oldest and biggest female elephant. They raise their young and socialize them, teaching them everything from how to find water to the appropriate bounds of behavior. When the young male elephants reach puberty, they lose their damn minds and literally leak testosterone out of their heads until an older, bigger male comes along to put them in their place. The female matriarchs kick them out. When it comes time to mate, young elephants will create a new herd, but they'll maintain close and frequent contact with their birth herds. Elephants manage and maintain these close ties in spite of, or perhaps because of, diverse and unique personalities within the group. The Amboseli Trust for Elephants produced a whole book about the individual characteristics of one tribe, rating each elephant's traits like confidence and curiosity, deference and respect. The most successful herds demonstrate a balance between teaching respect of the society and encouraging independence. But the most fascinating behavior to me happens around the birth of a new herd member. Elephants experience pregnancies from about 1.5 years to 2 years. Labor can take days, and it often takes place at night. So elephants in labor have often been observed doing things to interrupt that labor if it takes place during the day. Consequently, direct observation of wild elephant births is unusual, and video evidence is even rarer. When an elephant goes into labor and the birth of her calf is imminent, the female elephants in the herd gather around the laboring elephant. They encircle her, facing outward, to provide a watch and a protection against predators. If a predator approaches, the animals will stamp their feet and throw up mud and dust to disguise the vulnerable female in the center of the group. After the birth of the calf, the supporting elephants will again kick up dust and dirt, coating the newborn's delicate skin to protect it from the sun and burying the scent of the birth from predators. They will trumpet and stomp triumphantly, and they greet the newborn, each of them touching and smelling it with their sensitive trunks. During and immediately after labor, if the new mama is struggling, the other females will press in against her and will literally hold her up so that she can labor and mother successfully. Newborn elephants can stand and walk almost immediately after birth, but it's no easy task. The female herd members once again support the newborn and its mother in a circle of protection. Baby elephants can lean against a wall of immovable strength as they gain their own feet, and there's no shortage of tusks and trunks with which they can pull themselves to standing. The support lasts throughout the years that the elephant calf is growing to adulthood, a time during which they're watched over and taught by a group of aunties, grandmothers, cousins, and older sisters. I don't think I have to draw too many explicit parallels between female elephants and female humans here. I'm sure you can see for yourself the lessons we can take from our pachyderm pals. But I want to highlight here the element of support. We can anthropomorphize it and call it love if that feels good, and it does. Thinking about the way that elephant mamas support one another and their babies, we can take some important lessons. First, there's the way they literally hold up the birthing mama. Imagine if every woman who is going through something difficult or traumatic understood that they do not have to do this alone. Can you just imagine that kind of peace and rest? And just suppose they knew, without a doubt, that there was a group of immovable, strong, dedicated women surrounding them and protecting them from predators. Listen, I don't mind awkward. It's where I live. I say I love you a lot, and I mean it. Try it. You might be surprised at the beauty and honesty of those reactions you'll get. I can't wait for the end of this pandemic and for my days to be filled with consensual, long, awkward hugs. Can you just feel it? On this International Women's Day, I challenge you to reach out in love. Text, email, call, send a handwritten note, hire a pigeon, whatever. But reach out to a woman that you admire and tell her so. Be specific. Does she inspire you with her parenting? Is she a creative and courageous chef? Does she have a smile that lights up a room and fills your heart? Tell her so. Go ahead, make it awkward. And when you need it, those elephant mamas will be there for you, holding you up. Thanks for indulging me today and for giving me your time and energy. You are all so beautiful, and I love you.
Don't you think it's time we put a woman in the White House with a whole new attitude? We could use a little female common sense down on Pennsylvania Avenue. After 230 something years of waiting, it's way past overdue. Yeah, I think it's time we put a woman in the White House. Girls, how about you?
Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and continue this on with a very famous poem, Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your haughtiness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, wallowing and swallowing, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise. I rise. I rise. And I am going to go ahead and turn this over to Dr. Shireen Labda, who's going to introduce our lovely speaker.
Thank you, Destiny. Hello, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. My name is Shireen Lobdell, and I will be monitoring the Zoom meeting featuring the artist and professor Leticia Bahuyo. I teach art history and ceramics at New Mexico Highlands University in Las Vegas, New Mexico, in the Department of Visual and Performing Arts. Our department has sponsored this event while working in collaboration with the Women's Studies program here at Highlands University. We are actively acknowledging and celebrating International Women's Day by featuring a talented and contemporary woman artist as our guest speaker. Our studio art program here at Highlands University provides ample studio spaces coupled with small class sizes and attentive professors. Our studios are impressively equipped, and we offer an art foundry program that includes iron casting. Our visiting lecturer, Leticia Bahuyo, earned her MFA at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville and her BFA at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana. She's currently employed as an associate professor in sculpture at Texas A&M University and is actively involved in exhibiting her work and lecturing as a professional artist. Bahuyo's artwork presents us with objects left behind in the wake of technological progress, such as compact discs and player piano rolls, and presents them as artifacts which still hold the potential for communication. Their current silence is the result of devaluation and a lack of easy access to stored information. Bahuyo's drawings of abandoned items such as typewriters and corded phones also represent obsolete methods of communication, reminding us again of the extra effort and even creativity required to include undervalued voices into contemporary conversation. Bahuyo's process often involves the recontextualization of factory-produced materials, giving them a conceptual voice that speaks to the assignment of value, consumerism, and marginalization. Her most recent works are engaged with concepts of home, architecture, and body identity. The audience will be muted during this presentation, but please type any comments or questions you may have into the chat stream. We will be pausing throughout the presentation where the artist will respond to your questions. I will be selecting questions from the chat, and I apologize in advance if your question doesn't get asked, but we will try to include as many questions as possible into this conversation. I now give you Professor Leticia Bahuyo.
Greetings. Thank you so much, Shireen, for that introduction. And I so appreciate the way that you have taken my work and responded and reflected on it. The introduction that you wrote and that you just shared with everyone is beautifully captures what it is that I aim to try to do in my artwork. And thank you to Katie, Destiny, Shireen, David, and Erica for inviting me to be a part of this celebration for today and to be a part of this event. I've just been so honored as we've been working towards today to be a part of the conversation. And I hope that my sharing today and that my presentation helps to give another view as far as into how an artist responds to these ideas of International Women's Day, both as a professor, as a mother, as a wife, and as an artist. So thank you. With that, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go back and forth between sharing my screen and then just discussing. Let's see if I can do this. One of these days I'll make this smoother, but until that day, it always takes a minute. Can everybody see this? It says choose to challenge, my name. Excellent, excellent. Also, I want to thank all of the people who took the time to record videos to share their thoughts about International Women's Day, to challenge us to be authentic, to help us to learn to speak up, to support women. So all of them taking the time to share their insights, to share their stories and their challenges helps me to think about what it is that I feel challenged to do today. So as we choose to challenge, as Shireen shared with you all, one of the things that I think about is place. And so it's like, as those stories come through our work and through our experience, I wanted to share a little bit about where I come from to get going. And so that's me. That's one of my favorite pictures of me waiting for the school bus with my brothers. One of these days, I'm going to find a picture that includes my sister. But I don't know. I think she was about a year old. So she wasn't waiting for the school bus yet. And so these are my brothers. This is the landscape I grew up looking at. And the first sculpture I ever saw was this one, the Superman sculpture, because I'm from Metropolis, the hometown of Superman. Metropolis is the Greek word for big city. And they thought very highly of their location, being a city or a town on the Ohio River, and jinxed it for life and never got past 7,000 people. But it's the only metropolis on the map. And so when the comic book and then later the TV shows and movies came out, they've incorporated that. So it's now the hometown of Superman. And then down below, that hay bale image is something that I continue to think about as a landscape, a quiet landscape that's sort of broken up with little moments of what I describe as being like momentary monuments. It's like this bale of hay or a silo that sort of breaks that mundane landscape. So for me, those are sort of sensitivities that I bring to my artwork that has a lot to do with where I'm from. As Shireen was kind enough to note, that my BFA is from Notre Dame. So I went from Metropolis, Illinois up to Notre Dame, where I started to think about what was it that I wanted to do. And going to a liberal arts university or liberal arts college within the larger university, art classes helped me learn how to make, but it was all the other classes that helped me think about what kind of maker did I want to be, which then I continue to do in all of my work. Now I'm down in Corpus Christi, where it's a different landscape. But thinking about those CDs and that media that Shireen brought up, I want to share a quick view of a couple of different ways I've been working with CDs and DVDs. Thinking about lifting up and silent voices, the DVD and CD as they started was the primary way of being able to share data, to be able to connect and share information from one person to another, whether it be a song, later on a movie, software. It was the prime way to be able to share information. But then we changed. We want something faster. We download the information now. I can watch it on Netflix. I don't need all these discs. But one of the things I think about is that the CD is still showing up. It's still playing its role. It can still do its job. It's just that we've changed. So it needs a new role. So in these installations, I try to lift them up to give them one more voice, one more way to work. But thinking about the students who are here with us today, often, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll go to a museum and I see these beautiful things. How did this even get started? This is how it got started. These are the drawings that led to those sculptures back in like 2008. And so I was thinking about a tornado that fell down and eaten up too many of those bales of hay and cows. And I was gotten so full, it's fallen down. I'm trying to pick this thing of strength back up, trying to hoist it back up. And so it's like this balance between being really powerful, but sometimes being punched in the stomach. And then with this one on the other side, what did it feel like to look into the tornado, not from the side, but look through the top of it? And so those are the visual inspirations that then led to my first sculptures. How did it get started being built? This is in my studio back in 2009. And so when I was working with these CDs, I was working on this plastic bottle sculpture at the time. It was not working out well, but I was grateful to friends and family members who were bringing plastic bottles to me, water bottles that I was using to sculpt this piece. And a friend, a dear friend, she's an economics professor at Hanover College, where I was teaching at the time, brings over a box of CDs along with all their plastic bottles. And she's like, "Can you use these?" I'm like, I was like, "I really don't make art with those." I was like, "But sure, my favorite price is free." So I took the CDs and I put them to the side and I go back to work on this plastic bottle sculpture. And as I'm working on it, these beautiful CDs kept calling to me. And I was like, "What are you? No, 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 no. Focus on the plastic bottle sculpture." This plastic bottle sculpture was the most hideous thing I think I'd ever made at the time. Like, it was not working. And at some point in time, I was like, "Fine, what do you mean?" So I pick up the CD and I start doing research. So I spent like a week or so doing just research and data collecting. What does the CD mean? When was it invented? What's the R&D behind it? How many of them are produced a year? How many of them are destroyed in a year? All of the information I could gather. And then I started doing more research about like just the product, the way that the plastic and the metal are pressed together. And I was like, I can work with this. It's like the idea of data inside this little bitty space that now is just being given away because you can't recycle it. And so I wanted to find a way. I found about 40 different ways to make CD art that did not work. Like, it was not working. Like, I tried stitching them to fabric, they just look like sequins. I tried to use little wires to put them together, then one would break and I have to undo all of it. But I found a couple of really good ways. In this case, it's fishing line, hula hoops, and zip ties. That's my magic mix right there. All things you can get at your local store. It's not something, there's no magic, it's labor, it's work. You show up every day and you keep digging in. You find things that aren't working and you keep pushing. And from that, I then got to making pieces that start to do a little bit more. So this is the first one of these I ever made in 2009. It's at the Indianapolis School of Art, at Heron School of Art. And it's thanks to Paula Katz, who was the curator then, and Jay Jordan, who was a curator in Louisville, that gave me this opportunity. And it's thousands of CDs and DVDs where I'm starting to figure out how to design with them. But again, this was the first one, but I made that full sample one in my studio before going there in person. It took a lot of mistakes to get to this piece where, again, it's like that tornado. I'm trying to imagine lifting it up. I'm also visualizing a whale, how beautiful and elegant a whale looks like when it's swimming, or you're watching on Discovery Channel. I've never seen one like do that in person because I've never been under the water while they do that. But thinking about that type of physical form. And then if you've ever seen one get moved at like SeaWorld, they just look, it's just like awkward as the things pull up and then drop it into the next tank. So it's this like beautiful, elegant object that all of a sudden feels awkward in its own skin. I'm thinking about those types of things when I'm designing this. I want these CDs to feel the weight of all the destruction of plastic and petroleum that is included in that, but then also the desire to throw them away because I no longer want you. You're now discarded. And that thin line between desire and discard is something I really grasp onto in these pieces. Then I wanted to share with you all, so then sometimes I make them and they last for a short amount of time. That show was up for about, I want to say 4 or 5 months. Sometimes they last longer. This is a permanent installation for the South Bend Museum of Art. This is the space they asked me to design a piece for. And so I'm going to use my little highlighter to show you a couple of things. When I was at Notre Dame as an undergrad, I went to this museum. This is the South Bend Museum of Art. And I just remember my first time going there. I went into this museum door. Can you see my highlighter? And then I went through all the gallery pieces, like all the way through that gallery. And then I came out this door and then I left. There's a whole nother half of the museum over in this door. I just didn't know. And I didn't ask anybody. So I left, I missed it. So whenever they asked me to create a site-specific sculpture for their space, this is the space I was working in. And the thing that I was thinking about, I don't want anyone else to miss that. So I started thinking about what I wanted to create for them. And here's my early designs. Just sometimes I have to go to CAD, other times I have to just go to pencil. And so in this case, just drawing it out. I wanted to create sort of like a horn that opened up on one side of the Carmichael Gallery and then would drop down to the other side of the museum. So if you only knew to go to one side, then at least you'd follow this horn to the other. From those drawings, it then turns into schematics, pitches to the commission to make sure it can happen, building sections for them to see. So it's an aluminum version versus the wood of the first one. And this is what installing on site looks like. I kind of build like little Lego sections and then I then connect those together on site. It's then hoisted up, and then the ratchet straps are exchanged for stainless steel cable. This one's titled Amplitude. And when I was thinking about the spaces, from this door over here in the top, you can actually see this piece from multiple angles. And so if you come up here in the back, you're coming from the hotel on the other side of the street. And so you might be coming there for a conference. And then you see this, all of a sudden you're brought downstairs to see the museum. Or you might be walking along to go to an art camp up here on the second floor. And then you see the tip of the sculpture. Oh, wait, there's more down there. So trying to create a sculpture that could act as a teleporter. I like Star Trek a lot. A teleporter between spaces, but without the magic of a teleporter. Another Indiana one I wanted to share with everyone is this one, is the Event Horizons. And so this one is in the State Museum in Indiana. And it was for the bicentennial of the state of Indiana. And they asked me to create a site-specific sculpture for bicentennial celebration. And I wanted to share with the students, how does that even start? Where do you begin? And so I started out with images. I went to the site, brought my tape measure, and these are some of the spaces I was looking at. This is the way that the entrance to the museum looks from the garage side. And I wanted the most public space. You didn't have to have a ticket to get to see this. Anybody could see it. I wanted to lift up any viewer who happened to be parking in that parking garage to go to work, or was going there to go hike along the canal and walk up and down, or they were going to the museum. I wanted it for everyone. This is what an early sketch looks like. Nobody else needs to see this sketch. I'm sharing it with you. Only talks like this get to see these special images, just so you know. These I usually hide. But this is how it starts in my brain to get that going. And then trying to imagine, okay, how do I build this? And then I Photoshop to be able to pitch to the commission or to the panel, this is what I'd like to do. Will you fund this? And then this one. But then you get to building. And so here's the structure. It's just 2x4 wall. It goes 15 feet high, just right. And then the horn sections are pre-built. Horn sections like that last sculpture that gets suspended inside behind that wall. And then you just get to covering. This is about 16, maybe 17,000 CDs and DVDs. This is my dear, dear friend, Mary Lou Carrera. Mary Lou's based in Portland, Oregon, and she has been my primary crew for 10 years. And so anytime I have one coming up, I always reach out because she is amazing. And then, oh, this is me tucked behind the sculptural wall, working on the inside as she's working on the outside. This is in the evenings. We'd have crews of up to 20 people during the day to help. Filling in more. And I don't know if you see on these, what I'm trying to do is I'm working on this composition. I'm basically making a really large painting, again, lifting up the silent CD and DVD and creating something magical out of something mundane. This is finished. The very first night, I got one picture of it the first night. By 24 hours later, they had to put a stanchion up because people were climbing in the sculpture. There's a security camera right here. And there's a security guard like right over here. But people are still climbing in it. So they had to put a little rope, which, you know, people still climbed over the rope and then climbed in the sculpture. But it changes color. And it goes through 360 different colors in 8 minutes. It's a very slow change. So as you're walking in from the parking garage, you might not notice that it changed color. And you have to go back and see it. Or maybe you're walking really fast and you didn't see that it changed at all. But the next time you come and it's pink, you're like, wait, it's a whole new sculpture. So I'm asking people in a very subtle way to slow down, to acknowledge, to recognize. And one more CD sculpture I wanted to share with you. This is a horn piece that was in the Performing Arts Center here at Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, where I teach. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes I include in these sculptures audio. Can you hear that? And what that is it's a theremin. So for some of my sculptures, I'll attach a theremin to it, which is an interactive music instrument that has 2 radio antennae that you interrupt to be able to create the notes. And so that creates the sound that then comes out of the horn. So I'm creating a fabric out of CDs that no longer have a voice and giving them a new purpose as the horn for another voice, a voice that you, the audience member, create. And every single sculpture I make of these, I break thousands of CDs at a time. Like so many of them don't make it. And I save every fragment because each of those fragments have a voice too. And so I use those little pieces and I collage them together to make small little fractured pieces like this. This one's titled "You Can't Hurry Love" because this top little bitty fragment up here is the album, and it has like song number 11 is "You Can't Hurry Love," like in small little font. And so I cut it very carefully and attached it to the top of the sculpture. And if you would like to see more disc installations, I encourage you to go to my website. You can see all of them. I've made over 30 at this point since 2009, and I'm always making more. I have one going up right now in Victoria College in Victoria, Texas, and it's an exhibition with my fellow colleagues in sculpture at A&M Corpus Christi and our graduate students. And so that one I'm going to be posting online here really soon. And if you have any such discs, lots of people always ask, so where do you get the discs? From you all. So when you go home, if you happen to find you have any discs that are scratched, you're embarrassed that you still have all of the Dora the Explorer DVDs from when you were a child, I will take them and put them into the next sculpture. So that was my segment on CDs and DVDs that I wanted to share with you as far as how a material that we might just ignore because it's no longer our favorite way to be able to listen to information can become something magical. But it takes a little time, labor, and investigation to do so. Shireen, are you still with me?
Yes, we haven't had any questions yet, but does anybody want to post a question now? I have something I could ask you if you like.
Sure.
I noticed that with the broken CDs that you're letting us see kind of what they used to be. And that I think mostly with the larger pieces, you're more interested in the reflective surface and maybe a basic color that you can make a pattern with that's from the backside where the information is. And I was just wondering about that choice and maybe what you got involved in when you started letting the information from the top of the CD show in the smaller sculptures.
Absolutely. I'll go back to that slide. Can you see that? I need to get my highlighter off. So over here, you can even see in the small images, let me see if I can get my highlighter to go away. It still wants me to highlight things. So depending on the piece, like this one, whenever there's a horn, the outside form, you can see every label. And so like in this, there's all these yellow ones that keep showing up. I have 7,000 of the exact same single because this woman in San Francisco was, her fiance had come up with a single. He had CD wrapped it. There was jewel case, plastic, album art, everything. And then unfortunately he passed away before selling them. And so she had all of them and she put them up on Craigslist. I was like, I'll take them all, right? And so whenever you see it, you're like, what is this? So then you can Google search and find out about that wrapper. And so I like to show on the outside all of the content. Like it was a software disk from Apple. It was AOL. I have lots of AOL disks are in here. So on the outside of these horns, you can see all of that information, but you're right. This inside part, I love showing and sharing like that shiny, like it's just that magical sort of glistening part. But then for the horn pieces like this, or for the wall pieces, you can't see the back side. And so it's really important that they work as a painting, basically, where each CD becomes like one statement within a much larger cacophony of shiny memory. And then like you said, in these, oh, there's the sound. In these baby ones, when you turn them over, you can even see, like sometimes I've drilled holes in it because it was part of a past sculpture. You can see all of the memory of even how they were used before. Well, if there are any other questions, I'll go ahead and go to drawings.
I don't see any questions in the chat. Can I ask another question?
Of course.
I noticed that there's like a sort of a dual purpose for you call them horns, but you also call them vortexes, and they have this sort of this double meaning where you have sort of the starting with the tornado and then making vortexes, but then also speaking about them as horns. You have this idea about sound, but also about that energy of the tornado. Did you think of them as more one or the other, or do you feel like some of them are horns and some of them are vortexes?
More the latter. when I have an opportunity or if I've applied for an opportunity, there's a couple of questions once I get the ask. Like they want the show, I get the timeline, and if I'm going to do it, I'll ask a series of questions that's like a flow chart, just to be sort of practical. Like, so can I suspend from your ceiling? Yes or no? And if they say yes, then all of a sudden they have the option that I could do a horn-like based sculpture there. But if they say no, then it tends to be floor-based, and then a wall tends to be the best way to be able to fill that space. And so if I can do a wall-based piece, then the vortex component becomes a bigger component of the design. If I can suspend the sculpture, then it tends to lean towards a horn. And I've done pieces that have both, where they're like, you can install and suspend a little. They're like, like, and ask them how much weight per square foot. So I might have a horn section that yields and then ends in a tail or a wall section. So you get both a horn and a vortex. And so it allows me to be able to be flexible as I site specifically respond to a space and how an audience might move through that space with my sculpture added. Then for me, there's two different statements it allows. The horn allows me to think more fully about the idea of voice, like it has like sound actually coming out with a theremin. And I'm giving, like I said, I've made it basically a fabric of a new fabric of CDs to make the horn, and it's carrying the sound of the theremin out. Versus when it's a wall and there's no sound, I'm thinking really heavily about an event horizon on a vortex. So if anybody has ever watched any Star Trek episode, that there's an event horizon, but it's an actual term for the edge of a black hole or of a whirlpool, where the gravity and the force pulls you in, you can't escape. And so how much is too much? How close is too close? And so whether it's in a collection, like you've made too many decisions in one way, and so now you find yourself going further and further down that path. And so bumping up to that edge to where you no longer have a choice. I think about that liminality. And so I think a lot about those black holes of memory when I think about the vortex pieces versus the horn. But sometimes they do. Sometimes they overlap and cross over.
A question in chat. What is your dream installation? Maybe.
Sorry about that, Professor Lobdell. We had a tiny glitch. You and Letitia will need to unmute.
Okay. There's a question in chat from Katie. What is your dream installation? The largest installation you can think of?
My dream installation, part of it would be having like my dream team of people that I've worked with in the past. Like whenever I build one of these sculptures, I'll send messages to people who I remember. There's so many people that are involved in these sculptures and that have contributed, whether they even know it or not. They've like tossed in a CD whenever there's been a collection bin. But then I also think about all the curators, all the volunteers, all of my assistants who have had a hand in any of these pieces. So my dream installation would to have all of those people together to be able to work on one of these sculptures as a team. And then the installation would have to be large enough to be able to fit all of these people, especially with COVID, socially distanced. It'd be like the biggest space, right? But it would be like a labyrinth of a horn. And maybe every so often there's another theremin, so that way more people could play than at one time. And then the cacophony that would come out would be this like mix of voices and experience. And so not to say that I need all of the space, but for me, I know that like whenever I make these, I'll send images to people that I know had a huge hand in making these along the way, that I'm thinking about them. Because I'll come across CDs, I remember donations. I'm like, oh, I remember this student, or I remember this library. Library Kokomo, Indiana, they donated like 1,000 DVDs because they were deaccessioning their collection because of Netflix. And so every time I come across a Kokomo one, I remember that show. And so those types of memories. Oh, one of my friends donated to me from under her car seat, Love Mix 98 and Breakup Mix 99, right? Like that carries so much weight. We tried to play it, but it was too scratched because it's been under the floorboards of a car. You couldn't hear it. But whenever I think about that donation. I think about her friendship. And so for me, these sculptures are like a large quilt that I've stitched together, but it's one that also then it breaks. Or whenever I do a permanent one, that group of CDs will never come back into the mix. But that means that other people get to continue to experience those pieces. So I love making them. I tap out at I can do about 3 of these a year max before I get like just physically, they're hard, they get hard to make, but I love making them.
Well, this is a good segue into another question. Carol Linder was wondering what type of classes did you take to help you with learning to engineer these big pieces?
That is a really good question. No one ever taught me a class on how to make art out of CDs. Like I was saying earlier, I came up with like 40 ways to not make art out of CDs that were just not working. But I think a combination of like my drawing and painting classes about committing and continuing to look. But sculpture classes by far were primary for me because you would be taught how to use a tool, but then you were then encouraged and pushed to find other ways to be able to use that same material because you want to create a sense of like identity within your own piece. And so sculpture classes were definitely a major component. But I look back, you remember that picture of me and my brothers? One's a mechanical engineer, the other's an architect and furniture designer. I think there was something in the water when we were kids that we all became 3D artists. But I think a big part of it was that we lived in the middle of nowhere. That was our front door was about 3 acres back from that pickup spot for the bus, and this is pre VHS, pre Nintendo, and so we would get kicked outside, and you get bored, so you make stuff. I'm just glad we survived. And so like the desire to tinker, to take something apart, to be curious, that is something that I hope I teach in my classes is to be curious, to figure out how something works, and to not shy away from asking for help.
One last question about the horns. Have you ever thought of making a horn that viewers can walk through? This is from Abigail Staffelbach.
I have Abigail, and Abigail is going to show up in a little bit, and later on in this presentation, I'll show you how. But I have kind of made some that you can walk through. I did this piece in Beeville, Texas, a year ago, and it had a doorway, and so I made an arched piece that you could walk through part of it. And so I've done some that you could walk through. And I'm waiting for that opportunity to be able to make a bigger tunnel like experience where you can then become like actually integrated into that vortex, and maybe it'll minimize some of those people climbing into the sculptures because I think that's what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to feel that shiny envelopment around you. So I've gotten to do a little, but I'm waiting for more. So yeah, that's next. You can be on my team, Abigail. So with that, how about I go ahead and I'll go to the drawings and then I'll jump to, I have a couple of things I wanted to share with folks that I started thinking about as I was preparing for this lecture today. And I want to make sure to get to that with folks like Abigail in mind. So one of the other things that in prepping for this talk today that came up were my drawings. So I'm a sculptor. I love making objects, big and small. Like I make little tiny objects, and those are fascinating to me. I'll make a big sculpture, and that's like enveloping, like I was saying, like there's an energy that comes from both. And I don't want to be an artist who is led by the material. Like I choose the CD. And so I think about that where I want the biggest tool belt possible as far as when it comes to, I want to make an idea visible. And so if that idea needs to be in CDs, great. But what if that idea needs to be in steel, or that idea would be best in cast iron? And so I want to be able to have a comprehension of a variety of ways to be able to speak and share. So that way the materiality of the object can help carry that voice when I'm not there to help share it. And so sometimes I get tired of like just physically tired, or in other cases, I can't make as many big sculptures. 2011, I was pregnant with my daughter, and I got yelled at every time I would get near a ladder. I would climb ladders like on the sly, but I would try to make a sculpture, and I would get in trouble by certain family members, husband involved. Love him very much, but I know I shouldn't be doing it. But at the same time, I want to make. So I started doing drawing. So I went back to drawing. I was a drawing major in undergrad for 3 years before I took my first sculpture class. And so sometimes we will search and search and search. And when you find it, you have to get to the place where you don't, like something's missing. I knew something was not quite right. Something, I liked the making, but there was something missing. And the sculpture classes helped open that up for me. But I still love to draw. But what I do now is I choose what I draw on. So these are drawings on player piano roll. If you don't know what a player piano is, a player piano is basically an ancestor to the CD. And so each one of these holes, when you pump your feet, if you ever saw a Western movie and there's a guy playing this like a piano and he's pumping his feet in the background, he's not touching the keys, it's a player piano. And those are basically little air compressors that push air through these holes, and it recreates the sound that someone else played on another piano that make the marks. And some player piano rolls will have words, so it's like the early karaoke. And so you could actually sing along with it as it would play. And so in this case, the one on the left, Fly Away Safe, safe from the cares of tomorrow is what it reads. And I have no idea what it sounds like. I don't know what the melody is for this song. I can't play it, but I wanted to give voice. And I was making these pieces this year, or this last past year during COVID, thinking about how is that we are trying to find ways to be safe. And this is the Northern Mockingbird that I'm drawing on the player pianos rolls. The Northern Mockingbird can memorize up to 200 sounds. And they had been doing this long before, cars were invented, but now they know how to make the sound of a car. They can mimic that. And so I think about, how do we evolve? How do we change to be able to get used to this world that we have now? So I was looking to them as a model for how do we stay safe. And then another series of drawings I was doing during this last year in response to COVID and COVID guidelines were these tethered drawings, where the objects, as Shireen was mentioning in the introduction, that I salvage objects that have ample components of technology, but that they too have found another spot within technological history, and they're no longer used for that purpose at this point. Some of them function, but we have easier ways to be able to do it, so they get left behind. I find them to be so special because humans found ways to be able to create and communicate when it was maybe not the easiest way to do it, but at the time it was the highest of the high. It's just that we don't need that technology anymore, but that technology that was invented by humans is fascinating. The human desire to connect and communicate is palpable. And so in this case, it's a telephone that's being stretched, 2 Singer sewing machines being pulled apart with 1 thread between, and then 2 typewriters as if they're communicating from 6 feet apart. And then at the bottom is a Sony-based, double bass Walkman, and it has 2 headphones coming off of it. I love drawing these. They're drawn on wood. The wood is all reclaimed. But I wanted to share this because sometimes, we think that to be an artist, you have to have like these special tools. These are my favorite pencils. 2 are like sharpening pencils, 2 are pump pencils, 2 are lead based, like all lead, like woodless, and then 2 little rubbers. Those are my drawing tools for making all of these. And I draw these on wood. They were from Tell City Furniture. Tell City Furniture is a furniture company in Southern Indiana that got hit by a tornado back in the 90s and has never quite recovered. And so fast forward, they finally were selling the building, and the owner had 30 days to clear out 70,000 square feet of tools, machines, finished furniture, and scrap wood. And they finally had sold off most of those things, and they had piles of wood that they were just going to burn. So he called up myself and a couple of other artists to offer, would you like some wood? I went and filled up my trailer twice. And I got piles of, this was supposed to be wood that would have been the back of furniture pieces, like the back of a dresser or the bottom of a dresser drawer or the back of a china cabinet would have been these pieces of wood that had been obviously trees that had a history. And so whenever I draw on this, I love the wood grain because each piece of wood grain is a year. It's a year of history, whether or not that tree had a whole lot of water and nutrients or very few. And so whenever I draw on the wood, I think about that. And I think about all of the years that tree remembers and knows long before it got flattened and stripped into a piece of plywood. And then it was then disembodied and then sitting there waiting to become furniture and didn't get to become furniture. And so I love drawing on those ripples. Do you want to ask, were there any other questions, Shireen, or should I keep going?
I just wanted to make a comment that I really enjoy that connection that you make with, how people's voices can become undervalued because they're not speaking the right language. They're not saying things the right way, but they have something important to say. And it has this really nice connection with these obsolete equipment that you're showing us, that you're making drawings of, that I think it's a really poignant and symbolic way of talking about it. That it's an extra effort on our part to make sure that those voices aren't drowned out, that we do find a way to listen to them. And I love that connection conceptually.
Thank you, Shireen. That means a lot to hear. And I do. And for me, these choices are metaphors for people, or for societies. Who do we include and who do we exclude? And the need to look for silent voices that need to be maybe paid more attention to. And so I recognize I'm using these technological objects that have found maybe their way to a thrift store, or maybe they're heading to the junk pile, and trying to stop that stream, that waste stream, at least for a moment, to give attention to that. And for me, it's also a dialogue about who is it that we welcome and who is it that we pay attention to. Not everybody sees that, and so it means a whole lot that you recognize that, Shireen.
Well, I think it's pretty clear to me, but I'm used to looking at art, so so I wanted to point that out for everyone else, just so you can really enjoy that metaphor and see the connection.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you for making sure that got aired and shared. Well, with that, I'll go back and I'll finish. And so I wanted to share a little bit more about thinking about International Women's Day and the celebration that we're part of right now. And one more shout out to these are all of the people, these 11 people and groups are the ones at the beginning of our celebration today recorded and shared their experience and their words about how to act with power, how to be prepared. I thought that advice was really palpable, that power can't just be given, but when it's available, like when the door opens, you have to be prepared to go through that door. So we have to do our work. We have to do our job. And that the advice from that one woman who was describing as far as like sex trafficking and then like being trapped and like, how do you push forward? And the request at the end where she says, make this world a brighter place. Like all of those recordings and all of those stories, I think are ones that we need to keep in mind. And I don't know them, but I'm going to be Google searching all of them to make new friends and to reach out. I will be stalking them on Facebook for a little while, because their stories and their willingness to share means a lot, that they wanted to be a part of this today. So thank you to all of them. I wanted to share 2 more sculpture pieces that might be a little bit different as far as material. So I've been sharing like the CDs and then the drawings, but I'll do these pieces along the way that are really important to me that I only do like 1, maybe 2, but they don't necessarily come back around because there's something that's really powerful at that piece for me that turns into this one. And I try to make a second one and it's not there. And so that doesn't mean it can't come back. It's just that there was something that connected me to that material and the idea. This is one of my favorite pieces. This is from 2008 and it's a whirlpool. It's 6 feet by 9 feet, made entirely out of bath rugs from Walmart. I walked into Walmart when I was living in Hanover, Indiana, and that was the only place to shop. And I walk in and there's this like shopping cart filled with all of these bath rugs that nobody wanted. They were on like a quadruple discount. I don't know what I was going to the store to shop for, but I like stopped whatever I was. I bought all of them. I was like, I will give you a home. I was like, you poor things, right? Because all I could imagine was like, what child in some sweatshop was helping to make them happen? I was like, and then nobody else wants them. And then thinking of the hierarchy of rugs, this is like the lowest of the low. Like you have Berber carpet, maybe Oriental rugs, and then you have like a bath rug that surrounds your toilet. Like that's pretty low down on that like quadrant. So I'm like, how can I lift you up? And so I made this whirlpool. You can even still see some of those little highlights, like the little edges, like right here. You can see where one rug ended and the next one begins. It started with a drawing. So this is the drawing I was doing at the time. I was thinking about this little person looking into this, like on the edge or something, like looking down into this vortex, like back to that edge friction or that event horizon, being right on the edge, that tension that edge can mean. Like, do you jump or do you slide or do you back away? It depends on what it is. And so I was thinking about that type of pull, that kind of gravity and that kind of depression when I was thinking about this. And this is how it was made. On the right, you can see I just taped together a whole bunch of pieces of paper and started cutting, but certain colors I had more of. And so that deemed which words they would have. Then there was words around it. That's a poem that I wrote. And it reads, so the poem reads, perception is dependent on the relationships present. Present relationships are dependent on perception. So it keeps looping around and around. And each one, the color of the text of one rug is the color of the text of the next part. And then this color is the color in the next part. And so there's always change. So we can't understand around the world around us until we understand us, but we still really can't really understand what we need unless we start to understand the world around us, to understand how our perception has been developed. And so that sort of tug of war and that looping for me is its own kind of whirlpool that we have to reflect on, because there's no such thing as color. There's only color relationships. You understand something's more blue by putting it next to something that's green, but if you only look at blue, it looks fine. And so that comparative element to understand how to move forward. That was one of my favorite pieces. It's still in my studio, and every so often I'll pull it out, but it's something I'll hang on to for a long, long time. It's made with just duct tape and rugs. That's it. This is in the Philippines. My father's from the Philippines, and when in the Philippines, these little bundles of cable drive me crazy, and I'm enamored at the same time. Like, that's like everybody's telephone lines and internet cable and power lines all mixed together. My desire to like fix that, to clean them, is really palpable. Like, I want to go in and straighten them, because I'm like, how does that work? Like, all of that knot mixed together. And so I go around whenever been in the Philippines, and like sort of like documenting these, just so many lines and connections, and how that one connection might be connecting someone's Lola to their grandchildren. Like that, like, what is the conversation? What is it powering? What's the internet information that's being transposed? And so I want to clean it up. And so back home, this is my studio in Indiana when I was there. And across the alley from my studio and home was one of the internet companies. And they would literally throw out hundreds of feet of cable because they can't splice it. It comes in 1,000 feet. And if your house happened to be, say, 500 feet from the road, the other 500 feet, they might be able to use like the next 300 feet. But the last 200, they can't use because they can't splice it and guarantee that it'll make it through the next freeze. And so they would just toss out the last 200 feet. And so one day I just went up and asked them if instead of putting it in the dumpster, could they put them next to the dumpster, and I would get rid of it for them. And so they were kind enough to start collecting it, and it yielded sculptures like these, where I've cleaned up like all of that knot, and I've tried to like communicate a different kind of teleport, kind of different entryway between them. But when you would look inside, it's still a jumble. Like when you peek through the edges, you can see all of these cable ties and wires holding them together on the inside here. So you still have this chaos, but you have this like sort of falsified smoothness that guides us in. So that was titled Synergy. That was in 2014. And I wanted to share, so as I was finalizing my thoughts about International Women's Day, how do we lift up? How do we challenge? What kind of challenges should be where we're at right now to keep in mind for this coming year? And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about all of the women and men who have helped me get to the position that I'm in now. I've been a professor since 2001. And so as I have continued to work, there have been people that have made these opportunities possible. So I was thinking about all of them, but then I switched and I started thinking about my students. How many women have come across in my classes that I have been able to witness them learn and work and discover and create and share and lead themselves. And so I wanted to share these people with you. This on the left is Juliana Fuller. She's based here in Rockport, Texas. And this is one of her fabric installations she did in my installation class 2 years ago. It's still up in the library here at TAMUCC, at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. It's made out of fabric, and much of the fabric was salvage fabric from like sheets and pillowcases following Hurricane Harvey. She's creating a soft place where we feel the tension of school, the tension of final exams, but yet the comfort that something like the study room or the library helps to create a sense of community. And then on the right, Lily Pena, she chose this spot in the library because right next to it are all the financial books, like economics books and finance books and journals. And on the edge of the shelves, it has this like faux wood paneling. And so she was thinking about pennies when she was a child, how much a penny was worth. So she'd be so excited whenever she could collect a few to be able to buy something herself. And then so she took the pennies and she tried to mimic her own wood grain. There's $37 worth of pennies in this piece. So people started donating. We had little collection jars everywhere. And one day the librarians called me and they freaked out because there were pennies that started showing up on the floor. And they're like, oh, it's falling apart. I'm like, I don't think it's falling apart. I remember her making this. It's not falling apart. So they go and they look and they scan the whole piece. There's no pennies missing. So people were starting to donate pennies to the sculptures. Two more people. One's a Lily Pena again, and then Jade Goldick on the left. And so this is in my steel fabrication class. It's a 3,000 level course, and when they were making public pieces for the Performing Arts Center, and making pieces that reflected the architecture. And so they were looking at the architecture and welding their very first pieces. These were only their second sculptures they ever made in metal. And they're making this scale and this type of engagement is really powerful. And the way that it started to like move through the space, like Jade's here, these are the staircases up to get to the next level, to the mezzanines. And so to go by them, you would then see her piece that is like the rest of the architecture, both formal and angular, but in this case, she's drawing us back into that space as we would turn the corner to be able to walk up. She graduated a couple of years ago from A&M Corpus Christi. She's both a painter and a sculptor. And then another piece by Lily Pena. In this case, we're seeing a square from different angles. And so something as simple as a square, when you look at it from another angle, turns into a diamond, or a rectangle if you're looking at it from the side. And so how something that you might see initially as being simple can become complex in its own way. And Abigail, who asked the question earlier, this is one of her sculptures she was working on when I was teaching figure sculpture. And so you can see like it was, you measured all of you, right? So your nostril, your ear, so you're making a full self-portrait. She did an amazing job of really starting to capture her features in clay, which is not easy to do. So you're lining up all of your features. But then after we fired it, she then took that and painted it, made these butterflies and leaves, added horns. And one of the things that I remember her sharing was how as a child growing up playing in the creek bed, as far as like how she would start to feel like a tree nymph, like she was becoming part of the forest. And there was a sense of strength that came from that. And so she wanted to communicate that, as you can see like down below, where here, the bodice is starting to like be bark and different mildew starting to grow up and become her body. Such a powerful sculpture. And then this is more from A&M Corpus Christi. When I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about Amanda, Victoria, and Samantha. And so these are their pieces from casting class. So from a metal casting class, they were making aluminum casts into sand molds, and they worked off of softies. And so we brought in our favorite softie toys. And so Victoria brought in these bunnies, and then Samantha brought in a little soft duck, and Amanda brought in this pig. And we made molds off of those, and then they were to be shelves. So the animals, like these were to be the anchors to make a shelf. That would be a functional shelf, but how could we bring in these softies to be able to make them functional? And the way that each one of them brought in this unique individual dialogue, whether it's about these like bunnies that look like they're wrapped in gold as if they're Easter, and then they're holding up the yard. These ducks, they have a glass shelf that Samantha was creating, and then she added in even a little bit of landscape with the cattails. And then over here with Amanda, she has just this pig, but she's given it a tutu made out of burlap. And so it's like tippy-toeing, while at the same time it's holding up these shelves that are held together with knots. So another young woman that I think about a lot, this is my daughter. And so this is a sculpture I've been working on in my studio. So I wanted to share another young woman that I feel empowered by, and that I'm very cognizant about how I empower her. I'm working on a new series, continuing a series of styrofoam cast iron pieces. And so in this piece, she's the one on the right. So that's her waist height is the belt. And so thinking about tightening your belt, both in the metaphor for how we need to, like when you're trying to save money, you might have to tighten your belt because you can't have enough to eat, but also a feminine type of tighten your belt, the idea of like trying to like fit into a certain type of dress. And so that metaphor has such dualistic like sort of connotations that I draw off of about fitting in and trying to match expectation. And so I want to be very cautious about the types of expectations that I propose and that I hint towards in my life as a professor, as a sculptor, as a mother, and as a wife. And so I think about that when I sculpt these, when I designed them. So it's continuing. So it's going to be the bodice of her dress, and then the floor part, and then the one on the left is mine. So that's my height. She's going to be taller than me by next year. I just know it. Here's a past one of these, tighten your belt pieces. And so this is a little ranch style house. And so you'll see this is how the other ones will end up looking in about a month from now. We're all sand and continue to sand down the edges that start to look like ruffles in the dress or folds in the dress, but it's all in response to the architecture of the little house, like where there's a door or where there's a window that triggers the next little ripple. I also envisioned ziggurats. So a ziggurat is a place of worship, a place of creating your own mountain. So there's this mountain on this landscape, but all it is this mundane landscape of this Midwest house. And so the way that we perceive our place, our position, we can raise it up. We can be a ziggurat, even if it is a tiny plot of artificial grass. So a couple of shout outs before I unshare my screen. I am a collective junkie. I love being part of collectives. I'm in about 4 collectives right now. And those groups of artists that work together, sometimes as a full team, other times you show together. So I'm in Land Report Collective. That was a wonderful group of artists. And we show, there's 3 artists in Wyoming, 2 in Tennessee, and then myself in Texas. Our next show's in Wyoming. So we work together to have a dialogue about land and land use. This is another collective I'm a part of, TLC. So it's Tiffany, Letitia, and Christine. So that's where TLC comes from. Tiffany's a muralist. I'm the sculptor, and Christine is a landscape architect. And so we team up and we design pieces. And so we will, for the first time, be together in the same space. We only meet on Zoom ever since we started this. And Tiffany and I have known each other for many years. Christine and Tiffany traveled to Madagascar as college students, and that's where they met. And now Christine is in Boston working as an architect or as a landscape architect, and Tiffany's in New York working as a muralist, and then me here in Texas. But we get together and we brainstorm using our collective powers for good, and we design these pieces for other places. We're actually going to be visiting you all almost. We're going to be in Santa Fe, New Mexico in mid-April. So if you happen to be nearby, come check it out. Socially distanced, of course, and if you can even, we might even put you to work if you stand there too long. And one shout out to David Lobdell and everybody who's part of the National Conference on Contemporary Cast Iron Practices. 2 years ago was able to bring a number of students. That picture in the top left is me with my students from A&M Corpus Christi. The one in the blue bandana here, this is Juliana, who I was showing you her fabric piece a little while ago. And this is Sarah, Kayla, and Nicole. They are wonderful artists and sculptors. I wish I had enough time to include images by all of their works because they give me power as far as like I feel stronger and I want to dig in and do more as a professor by being able to work with students like them. And all the students who continue to find their way to A&M Corpus Christi. I'm so honored that in April for this conference, I get to be the keynote speaker for that conference. And it'll be a different talk than this one. And so if you can, I encourage you to come join us there. It's only $25 to attend the entire conference if you sign up right now. And you'll be able to listen not only to my talk, but to all the panels and experiences. And last but not least, here's where I'm located. So right now I am at my house. I live right here. And so I'm really close to campus so that way I can always check on my Foundry and work with my students as often as possible. This is where my office, studio, and classrooms are. And if you are interested in finding out more, you're welcome to follow me. I would love to see you all on Instagram at elbahuyo, or you can follow me and my students at TanguCC3D. See what we're up to and what we're making. And if any of you are thinking about potential grad school opportunities, I always welcome chatting and thinking about what could the next steps be. So if you'd want to come and join me down here, let me know. Thank you all so very much. I'm going to stop my sharing and see if Shireen, if you had any thoughts or if there were any questions that you wanted to,
There's a lot of affirmation that people are really enjoying your talk. And saying things like, what a great conversation to have with your daughter, with the piece with the dresses and the houses. Fantastic work. Love that you're bringing beauty and meaning to the mundane and discarded. Lots of really nice comments here. Intrigued by your commitment to a holistic approach. Everything from who made the rugs to what home they have to the relationships of colors. But there's also, someone wanted to know how you've adapted to working with students during COVID, and that was I'm sorry if I pronounced this wrong, Julie Setsaros.
Thank you, Julie. I tend to have a sort of an attitude that like we will keep working. Nothing's going to stop us. We might have to shift a little bit, but that we will find a way. And so when COVID first hit, we went online. But my students that I've had since 2011, I've always included website development in all of my classes, ranging from beginning sculpture to advanced sculpture. And so I have the students document their work and post it on their websites as we make. So we already had that kind of interaction. And so I could already see their work through that method. And so they just had to keep doing that as far as the way that they shared, even back when COVID was just getting started and we didn't know what to do. And so we would have Zoom meetings then, and we shifted materials. It didn't always work for everybody, but I tried to be as flexible as possible to give opportunity to be able to see the space that you have at home as a creative space. As far as how I've adjusted now, A&M Corpus Christi has approached COVID this year, this academic year, with more flexibility than we did back in April. And so I teach my classes in a pseudo hybrid method. And so I'm always in person. And I have my computer and my projector set up. So the projector captures if I'm doing something like a demo, so you can see it up big if you don't have to, so you don't have to get close. And then I'm also Zooming for any of the students who can't be there that day. Maybe they've come in contact with someone who had COVID. Maybe they're not feeling well and they don't know if they've gotten tested, but they don't know yet. So they're gonna stay at home. So then they jump in that way. To help, what I've done is I've made some shifts in my project assignments. And so project assignments tend to be a little smaller now. And instead of just having one small project, we'll have 3 small projects that some that you could take home and some you could work on at school. And so in that way, if you needed to carry it home because you're like, I have a feeling, I'm not feeling so well, so I'm gonna work from home for a while. As long as you check in, so it's all synchronous. So you just have to show up at the beginning of class in person or outside. But by having 3 different assignments at the same time in Sculpture 1, for example, some people are working in the wood shop, some are in the metal shop, some are in the main room working with wire. And so they naturally start to distance and throughout the entire sculpture space. So I've changed my project assignments to match the situation that we're in, to be able to allow for as much creativity as possible, but to meet people where they're at. At the same time, I also have the next project that they're doing. They always have 2 options to choose between. So the next project my Sculpture 1 students are doing are wearable wings or kinetic cars. And so they have a couple of choices to get to make there. And so I love titles, but I also try to give people options so that way they can push their creativity. I don't need to make a Letitia-ite, but I want to help people find their artistic voice while building their tool belt. I often will joke that my sculpture classes are empowerment classes that yield sculptures along the way.
Well, I don't see any more questions. People are thanking you, telling you your work is gorgeous and amazing. A lot of amazings.
Oh, I appreciate that. I really do. And because I think that as an artist, I've continued to exhibit and I've continued to show, travel carefully, but I know that I miss, as I was mentioning earlier, as far as groups, when it comes to making my pieces, I miss being able to work with people. And I did this piece in the University of Dallas, and I gave 2 lectures there, and I was inside the gallery with my sculpture, and I was Zooming to the room next door. So they were all in the classroom, in the lecture room next door to me. I could almost hear them. But I couldn't fully. And so not being able to read an audience. And so your all's chats that you've been putting up really help, because that's what we have now. Instead of in a lecture hall, I would usually obviously be responding to the audience. What is it? Did a joke land or not? And so I think I'm funny, but in Zoom silence, I'm like, I don't know. Did that come out? Okay. And so I think that hearing people's responses means so much. And so I'm grateful for that. And like I said, I feel very fortunate because I get to be here with you, that my name got brought up to be part of this. And again, I only got here because of so many other people opening the door and sometimes even showing me through the door to help make opportunities that much more understood. But I had to do my job. As was mentioned in the earlier recording, you have to be prepared. And so you have to do your side of it. You have to do all of the ample work, the research, find out what the options are. So that way, whenever the opportunity does come, you're ready to jump through it.
Dr. Jen Elred is asking you, what would you think about doing a CD sculpture through a lighted high ropes course?
That would be cool.
Yeah, the U.S. National Whitewater Center in Charlotte, North Carolina often has artists come to do installations.
Oh, Dr. Jean Aldred, I think that's a great idea. If you happen to have a link to that, if you'd be so kind to either put in the chat or even email me, that'd be fascinating as a space to be able to work with. And even if it wasn't a CD piece, it could be another material. I've done 2 outdoor pieces so far with CDs, and I always hesitate because they don't exactly like being outside, but that doesn't mean that I won't try. But being able to do it amidst a light, like a ropes course, what does a ropes course do? It's often for team building, to be able to bring people to help them rely on one another. And that could be a really fascinating way to be able to engage those CDs, having them either above and below you as you're walking through a vortex. That'd be cool.
Okay, I think we're done with the chat, possibly.
Sure. Well,
Carolinda has a comment. Our Highlands Wise Women in Science Excelling group is happy that we rescheduled and joined this event today. Thank you so much.
You are welcome, Carol. Thank you. I'm glad that you all were able to reschedule and join, because I know there's so many events going on, and it means a lot that you took the time. So thank you. And again, thank you, Destiny, Katie, Shireen, and David, and Erica. Programming an online event is in some ways harder than programming an in-person event. I know this very well. And there's so many things that you stress about to be able to get just right, that back in the day, a year ago, that was a day back in the day, a year ago, where you just open the lecture hall and schedule some snacks. But now having to figure out which Zoom link do we use? Is there a password? Is there not? There's so many things to worry about and consider. So I'm grateful to all of you for taking the time to help coordinate it, and to New Mexico Highlands University for supporting the arts and women's gender studies programs. Yeah, thank you.
Letitia, thank you. This has been absolutely amazing. We have just a couple of components left that are going to be fun and interesting. I will post the link to this recording on a YouTube channel by the end of the day, and I will get it out. I'll make sure that Michelle Bencoma has to put it on the portal, so you can access it on the portal, or you can email any of us in the coordinator circle here, and we'd be happy to share that link as well. And it will be on, I'm sure Letitia will put it on her Facebook page. It'll be on the HU Women's Center page, Women X Center page, and on my personal page as well. So this has been so amazing. I would like to give a shout out to just want to call attention to the emotions that can be present whenever we're experiencing art. And sometimes when we are looking at 3D pieces in a 2D space, it sometimes can feel strange to connect with those emotions. But personally, when I was looking at Letitia's installation that she's doing with her daughter, I felt in my body, I felt this connection and this emotion rise up. So we've been here for 2 hours, and this has been fascinating, but 2 hours is a long time in one spot. So stand up again. If you're comfortable, turn your camera on. Give us another stretch. And while we're stretching, we're going to be thanking the people who joined us today. Destiny Nuno, feel free at this point. I will make a note that you can unmute yourselves. Actually, I have to be honest with you. Oh, look, I did it. Okay, you can all unmute. So if you unmute your microphone, this is the time when you can shout out your thank you to the person that you thought of, the woman who inspired you. You can thank any of the coordinators or any of the performers today. You can thank your mom. So microphones off if you're comfortable, cameras off if you're comfortable. Give yourself some space and fill up your Zoom square and shout out your thanks.
Thank you, Leticia and everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Leticia. That was amazing.
So we have one more piece, and that is a fantastic collage of women who are choosing to challenge. So I would like to invite you to take one more big breath in. Stretch your arms up and exhale. One more in. And exhale. And I will start this slideshow of fantastic women. I will leave your microphones unmuted. You want to chuckle and chat while we're watching the slideshow, that would be fantastic. So bear with me while I make fantastic tech hops.
I couldn't get on my meeting, so I'm on my phone with it, which
Thank you. Destiny, if you have anything more to add, we have one last very short exercise, but I think Destiny has a couple people she wants to.
First and foremost, thank you all for being here after seeing these photos. I know me and Katie had put this together, but it's still so empowering, making me feel so happy and good to be a woman. I just want to say thank you again. Don't forget to follow Leticia Bahuyo on social media. And also the programs, the art program here at Highlands, as well as the Gender and Women's Studies program. If you guys are interested in those, please go ahead and check out the nmhu.edu website. Contact information for all the participants has been put in the chat box. So if you guys want to go ahead and check that out. I just really wanted to say thank you all for being here and a part of this and for allowing me, Katie, Leticia, Dr. Durkis, David Lobdell, Shireen Lobdell, all of us to put on this event for you guys. And we hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did.
Thank you again. The last thing we're going to do as we head on our way is I would love for you to take all of your mics off mute again and turn your cameras on again, because the last thing we're going to do is we're going to say thank you to that person that we thought of at the beginning of our event today. That one person, that woman who inspired you, who helped shape your life. And on the count of 3, we're going to create some beautiful chaos. And on the count of 3, you're going to unmute your mic. And so do that now. And when I get to 3, you're going to shout out loud as you can so that the neighbors ask you what on earth you're doing now, or your kids come in and go, Mom, keep it down, I'm in class. And you're going to shout out her name. So think about it. Unmute your mics. And if I'm the only one yelling, I'm going to be mad. I'm going to keep you all on this Zoom meeting for another 10 minutes. So just get ready. All right, 1, 2, 3.
Mary.
Thank you. Take this love and this energy with you into the next weekend as we move through Women's History Month and into your relationships. Thank you again, and happy International Women's Day.